Hey there folks, happy Halloween. Today we're going to be reviewing 1981's Halloween 2. So without further ado, let's get into it. Dick Warlock as Michael Myers. Dick Warlock as the Shape, as the Boogeyman. How do I feel about him? I really enjoyed Dick Warlock's portrayal of Michael Myers. I've started to really grow on him over the years, more recently, because I've just heard a lot of other people's opinions on it, and I started looking at it a little bit differently and more appreciating it for its own thing. So by itself, I really do like Dick Warlock's Michael Myers. Like for an example, A.J. Good, that was his favorite Michael Myers up until James Jude Courtney. And I started listening to a lot of the different things that he had to say about it, so I started to appreciate it a lot more. I'm just not the biggest fan of the robot walk in terms of like where Michael comes from, like Dick Warlock or Nick Castle being the first Michael Myers. So for that to take place right afterwards, that's where it bothers me. That's where I get a little bit annoyed. His height doesn't bother me. The mask looks great. He looks great in and of itself. It's just his walk is really what bothers me at the end of the day. But again, looking at it in and of itself, I really do like it. I think Dick Warlock does a really good job. It's just the continuity is where it comes from. So I don't know if Dick Warlock would be my second choice for Michael Myers, but he's definitely top 3. But yeah, I do really like Dick Warlock's Michael Myers. Moving on, the brother-sister storyline. I've never been too bothered by it in the sense that I don't prefer it, but when I watch the movies, it's not really in my face. Like, I don't consistently think about it. For an example, H2O or Halloween H20 is one of my favorite Halloween movies, and it goes back and forth for the second and third between this and H2O. Like, that whole movie is like Laurie knowing that she is Michael's sister, right? It's more in your face than this movie is, but it's never something that's really on my mind. I don't really genuinely think about it. So I kind of just block it out, if that makes any sense, because I don't prefer it. So, I mean, it doesn't bother me. It would have been nice to see Laurie actually find it out. That's one of the reasons that I really enjoyed Laurie's character in Halloween 2 by Rob Zombie. And if you want to know my thoughts on that, of course, I have a video for it up on the channel. But it would have been nice for Laurie to at least find it out, because this is a very similar situation to Halloween 5 with Danielle Harris, where Jamie Lee Curtis doesn't really get a whole lot to do in this movie. She barely has any lines of dialogue. She doesn't really get to act all that much. It's mostly her crawling around and just crying and whimpering, and not even that's that prevalent in the film. But, I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis still does a good job, as always, and I still like Laurie Strode. I like her version of Laurie Strode a lot, so, you know, it's nice that she's in it. She just doesn't really have a whole lot to do, and again, the brother-sister thing, it's not, I just don't think about it that much, so it does bother me because I don't prefer it, but it doesn't bother me because I don't really care that much, if it makes any sense. The music, you can hear it a little bit in the background. I've already talked about this a little bit. I'm not the biggest fan of the music in this movie because there's a lot of points where it just gets really muddly, and I don't like it. Like, it starts to like just kind of get loud and chaotic, specifically at the beginning of the film. I don't like that, and also it kind of sounds, to me it sounds like a downgrade from the original film. But I do think it's better than a lot of what we got in the series. The atmosphere in this movie, definitely a lot of atmosphere. There's not a whole lot of blue light in this movie compared to like Halloween 1 or 4, but there is a lot of atmosphere. It's just warmer atmosphere. The whole hospital feels like Michael's just all over the place. It feels like he's looming over the entire hospital. And there's a lot of darkness in this movie. It's not quite as dark as Halloween 1 or 3, I would say, but there's a lot of darkness. Like in Halloween 1 and 3, there's just complete scenes, there's whole shots where it's just drenched in darkness. That's not as prevalent in this movie, but there is still a lot of atmosphere. And it's got this kind of unique feeling where it kind of sets it apart from Halloween 2, or Halloween 1, I should say. And I think that, like, for an example, like Halloween 2018, when they try to like replicate the original, they more commonly replicate Halloween 2. For an example, like the scene where that long tracking shot in Halloween 2018, that feels a lot more like this movie, where you spend a lot more time with Michael. He's not really sticking to the shadows. You just kind of follow him around different places, and that's kind of what they do in 2018. And James Jude Courtney, the way he moves in that long tracking shot feels more like Dick Warlock to me than it does James Jude Courtney. As much as I love James Jude Courtney, he feels more like a blend between Nick Castle and Nick Castle and Dick Warlock than he does just Nick Castle. But that unique feeling that you get in this movie, or at least that I get, feels more like the later films inspired try to inspire more from this movie than they did Halloween 1. Halloween 1 still just is, it's just like lightning in a bottle. It's really hard to try to grasp from it properly, or to draw from it properly, or get inspiration from it properly, at least from what I've seen. It feels like people have been more able to replicate Halloween 2 than Halloween 1. Like, a lot of the shots of the new trilogy where the mask in certain scenes, it looks a lot more like the way Dick Warlock wears it because of the way they stuff it and different things like that than it ever did when Nick Castle was wearing it. That's just something that I've noticed. But yeah, it does have a really unique feeling in this film. It definitely sets it apart from a lot of the other ones. It doesn't quite touch the original, but I think this movie inspired a lot more of the other movies than the original does. I think a lot of the other movies aren't really able to draw from this movie properly. A broken record, but hopefully you guys get what I'm trying to say. Speaking of the feeling and the atmosphere, we got Dean Cundey back in this film. Dean Cundey is the cinematographer for both the first 2 Halloweens as well as Season of the Witch. He does a fantastic job. As always, the movie is just really moody, dark, atmospheric, all these different things. It's just, again, it's just lightning in a bottle. It's magic. What they're able to do with these movies and give them the feeling that they do. Halloween 4 is drenched in atmosphere, but it still doesn't quite feel like Dean Cundey's work. Dean Cundey is a master, in my opinion, and hopefully one day I'll be able to recreate some of his magic. This movie has a lot more gore in it. The kills are a little bit more bloody, even down to Laurie's injuries being slightly altered. In the original film, Laurie got a small cut on her left shoulder, or her left arm, shoulder area, it doesn't really matter. And it wasn't really, she didn't really bleed that much from it. Michael barely got her. He basically just ripped her shirt. However, in Halloween 2, all of a sudden she's got a cut down her arm and her chest. I don't know how that happened, but they did add to that, and they made her a little bit more bloody, and Annie's throat being slit, they added more blood to that. And the actual kills in this movie are a little bit more dramatic. Apparently, from what I've heard, that was actually, a lot of that was inspired by John Carpenter going back and making some of the deaths more gory. That wasn't initially what Rick Rosenthal wanted to do. So I find that interesting. I don't know why John Carpenter would want to depart from that. Obviously, he wants to up the ante. He's made it, at least to me, he's made it clear that he doesn't want to make the same film over and over again. That's why, at least for me, I don't even know if they did a Halloween reboot. I don't even know if I would want John Carpenter to direct it, because I feel like even he wouldn't be able to recreate the magic that he did in 1978. I feel like it would have to be somebody who's a really, really, really big fan that has just studied the original film to a T. Because, I mean, if we're being honest, there's a lot of people out there that love that original movie more than John Carpenter himself does. And I feel like even he couldn't recreate that. So, and hearing some of the different things, and then of course him putting his stamp of approval on the new trilogy, which I'm not the biggest fan of, and I don't think it's really as close to the original movie as they like to think it is. But anyway, moving on. Some of the deaths are a little bit more gory. One of the ones that I really like are the eyeball one, just because that one's a little less gory. It's a little bit more held back. I prefer that. I think that works better for Michael. It's just a needle to the eye, and then of course the lead up to that where Michael comes out of the darkness. And then also another death that I really like is the pool death. That one does really well. Sorry about this, the focus is being weird. But the pool death is another really good death, and I think they really did that well. I remember them talking about the makeup that they had to apply for that scene, and how it was almost like the water was taking the makeup off, if I can remember. I don't know, it's really practical effects that they did for that scene were pretty cool, so I do like that. But moving on to the hospital, I already touched on this a little bit. The hospital's a really cool setting for this movie. It makes it very eerie. People have fears at the hospital and different things like that, and I can remember when some of my family members are in the hospital and you're just walking around it at the night or later in the day, it has this eerie feeling about it, and you kind of just wander around to go get something to eat or something like that. Definitely very effective in this movie. I like it a lot. One thing that's really cool is that this movie gets a chance to revisit South Pasadena, which, if you are not aware, is where they shot the original Halloween movie. So this movie stays very true to Haddonfield. It feels very much like Haddonfield because it is shot in the same town. And Laurie finding out that she's not Michael's sister. Again, I already touched on this a little bit. I think this movie would have been a lot more effective if it either left the brother-sister out completely, or if it at least let Laurie find it out. The story would have to be tweaked a little bit more than a small bit, I would think, to really give her a chance to find that out. Unless you do it in a really clever way where maybe she realizes it. I don't know. I don't know how you would do it. I would leave it out completely, but the fact that they didn't even have her react or find out about it is crazy. So I'm not the biggest fan of that. And moving on to the last thing is Michael and Loomis'S death. And yes, Loomis does die in this movie. That's why we don't see him at the end of the movie. It wasn't until later on where they decided to make it so he survived. But Loomis and Michael die. They die together. Loomis kills his monster. I really like that. It's really, really well done. I like it. The fire, it's very effective. And then, of course, Michael continuing, like the machine that he is, continuing to chase Laurie and then just falling flat in his face. And his body is not able to continue what his will is trying to do. So I like that a lot. I like Michael's death. I like Loomis's sacrifice. It all works out very well. And there's even a little bit foreshadowing in this movie where where Loomis gets the lighter. I forget who he gets the lighter from, but I remember that he gets the lighter. So that's kind of cool. But all that being said, that's pretty much it. I'm going to go ahead and review my Halloween 1, or do the review for Halloween 1. Actually, if you want to comment and let me know what you think about this movie or any of the other movies in the series, what your favorite timeline is, which ranking is, all that good stuff. I don't know. But if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and of course hit the notification bell. And of course, until next time, true believers.